Okay, Be'ez Hashem, today's daf, Masechta Baba Kamma daf Chof Hey, and we'll begin from daf Chof Dalet Amud Beis by the Mishnah. Mishnah begins, Shar Hamazik B'Rshus Hanizik. If the shar that does the damage is the damager that goes into the domain of the victim, right? So Shar Mazik B'Rshus Hanizik, what's Ketzad? What is that? What's that all about? Nogach, if the animal came in and started goring, Nogach, it started pushing, Noshach, it started biting, Ravatz, it started crouching and stomping, Boat, it started kicking. So if all this happened, B'Rshus Rabim, in the public domain, so that's called Keren, B'Rshus Rabim. The first time this happens, the Torah gives you a leniency, Mishalim Chatzi Nezik, you pay half damages. But what happens if the animal came goring B'Rshus HaNizak in the domain of the victim, right? So what's that all about? So do you pay more? So Rab Tarfon says once the animal goes into the B'Rshus HaNizak, so Rab Tarfon says Nezik Shalom, you pay the full damages. But Chachamim say no, Chatzi Nezik, it's still the same story. You pay half damages. There's no difference whether the animal goes into the B'Rshus HaNizak. It still will pay only half nezik. That's the opinion of Chachamim. Amar lehem Rab Tarfon said, I'm correct. I have a kal v'choima. Why? Uma b'mokom shehekel al Hashem b'al regel b'Rshus Rabim shu potter. Take a look at the shein and regel, right? The eating of the animal. If the animal knocked something down while it was walking, or stepped on something when it was walking. If this happened in B'Rshus Rabim, then you potter. The Torah says that shein and regel are potter and B'Rshus Rabim. If it stamps on if it eats somebody's fruits in the B'Rshus Rabim, the animal you're not obligated to pay. But hechmir Allah B'Rshus Nizik. But if the animal went into the domain of the nizik, you pay l'shalom nezik shalom. Then you pay the full damages. So right, so shein and regel is potter B'Rshus Rabim, but in B'Rshus Nizik you'll pay full damages. So Keren, Malkam Shehechmel Keren B'Rshus Rabim, the Torah was strict on Keren B'Rshus Rabim, that l'shalim chatzi nezek, you pay half a nezek in B'Rshus Rabim. Ein din, certainly shenachmer all of B'Rshus Nizik l'shalim nezek shalim. Then therefore, if Keren happens to be in B'Rshus Nizik, it should be like shein regel B'Rshus Nizik. You should pay full damages. So that's Rabbi Tarfon's opinion. Keren B'Rshus Nizik, even the first time, you should pay full damages. So the Chachamim said to Rab Tarfon, Dayay lovay min hadin lias kenidan. And this is the other phrase you need to remember tonight, is besides the kal v'choima, the Dayay lovay min hadin lidin kenidan, which means that the student can't outdo the teacher. So who's the teacher over here? The teacher over here, the Gemara, the Mishnah understands now, is Keren B'Rshus Harabim. And the student will be Keren B'Rshus HaNizak. Well, if they both have to be equal, Ma B'Rshus Rabim, just like Keren B'Rshus Rabim Chatzi Nezek. So the student, which is what you want to learn from the teacher, should be no more than the teacher itself. A B'Rshus HaNizak Chatzi Nezek. It's so also in B'Rshus HaNizak, Keren should pay Chatzi Nezek, and that is the opinion of the Chachamim, that it's enough for the conclusion that emerges from a kal v'choima, that it should be like the source, like the teacher of the kal v'choima, and therefore Keren B'Rshus Harabim is Chatzi Nezek. So also B'Rshus HaNizak is Chatzi Nezek, right? If you want to put it as a mashal, you have a little kid who can bench press 50 pounds. So if this kid can bench press 50 pounds, would you say certainly this adult can bench press 50 pounds or 100 pounds? Would you say that adult can bench press 100 pounds? No, you don't know for sure. At least we can say that the adult can bench press 50 pounds like the kid could, but not more.
No, but I might think that the student could be a less. It could be like an Av and a Tolda. It could be, I might think that it could be a less of a degree.
But
he's saying it has to be equal.
Correct. He has to be equal, but not the student can't even be more than the
no, obviously, yes.
So sometimes it is. That's why the Gemara says
right.
So that's where Rab Tarfon says no. Here, the student can be more than the teacher, because who is this teacher? The teacher Afani says we go to the top of the page. Loy odin Karen. The teacher's not Karen to Karen. Ani odin Karen Meregel. Karen is the student. Regel is the teacher. The teacher of Regel, B'Rshus Harabim, is Potter, right? B'Rshus Hanizik, it pays 100% of the damages. So Karen, which is the student, which B'Rshus Harabim pays half a Nezik, so B'Rshus Harnizak should pay 100% of the damages. And that's what the Gemara is saying. Ma b'mokom shehikel ala shein bal haregel b'Rshus Harabim. When you go lenient on shein regel and Rshus Harabim, that shein regel and Rshus Harabim is Potter. Hechmer beKaren. In that place of Rshus Harabim, Karen would pay half damages. Shein regel would be Potter and Rshus Harabim, and Karen would pay half damages. Mokoim in a place which is Rshus Hanizik. Shehechmer al shein bal regel b'Rshus Hanizik. In Rshus Hanizik, even shein regel will pay 100% of the damages. Einidin, certainly shenachme beKaren, we should say Karen pays 100% of the damage. So basically, the student is exactly like the teacher. The teacher in Beregel, in Rshus Harabim, in Rshus Hanizik, which pays 100% of the damages. So the student, which is Karen B'Rshus Hanizik, should also pay 100% of the damages. And this is the opinion of Tarfin. Amr Lois, he said that no, the student has to be less than, I think this is what you're trying to say, Steve, that the student has to be less than the teacher. Ma b'Rshus Harabim, just like the teacher, part of the teacher is Karen B'Rshus Harabim pays Chatzi Nezik, Af B'Rshus Hanizik, so also Karen B'Rshus Hanizik pays Chatzi Nezik, pays a half a nezik. So now the Gemara just says in the Torah, we do find that if you have a Kal V'chomer, you pull back on the Kal V'chomer to say that the student can't be more than the teacher. And the Gemara just asks the question this way: Rab Tarfon lesle dayai, he doesn't hold of this concept of dayai, which means you pull back on the Kal V'chomer to make it less than the teacher or equal to the teacher. V'adaya deraisahu, we find the concept of dayai in the Torah. The Tanya we learned to the Brisa. Bedin Kal V'chomer ketzat. Where do you see Kal V'chomer in the Torah? We know the story of Miriam speaking Lashon Hara about Moshe Rabbeinu in the Torah, correct? And she got saras. Now, the question was how long should Miriam be in quarantine? So the Chumash says like this: Hashem made like a Kal V'chomer. Hashem el Moshe. Hashem says to Moshe, V'avia, suppose a father gets angry at his daughter. A regular father gets angry at his daughter. Yorak b'fanao, spit before his daughter. Haloisi koleim, she would be in quarantine, shivas yamin. If a father is angry at her daughter, she should close herself up for 7 days and not come out. So if God is angry at Miriam, Kal V'chomer, we should say Lashchina Arba Asayim, that she should be in quarantine for 14 days. So Miriam should be in quarantine for 14 days. Ella, but the point is, Daya Loba bin Adin Lias Kenidan, that the teacher will be we want to equalize the student like the teacher, and therefore in this case, even though Miriam was angered by Hashem was angry at Miriam, but we're going to make him like the teacher, which is if a regular father is angry at his daughter, the punishment is for 7 days. So if God is angry at his daughter Miriam, it'll also be only for 7 days. So we see that although you have a Kal V'chomer, God is much stronger than a regular father, and you should quarantine her for 14 days, but you limit it for 7 days, and that's exactly what happened. Miriam was only quarantined for 7 days. So what do you see from there? From the Chumash, you see that there's a Kal V'chomer, and then you limit the Kal V'chomer with the Dayai. So why doesn't Rab Tarfon do that in our Mishnah? Answers the Gemara, Ki lesle daya. When would Rav Tarfon say there is no daya? Like in our Mishnah, Heicha de mifrach Kal V'chomer, that will break the Kal V'chomer. Heicha de loy mifrach Kal V'chomer, if it wouldn't break the Kal V'chomer, isle daya, we would use the daya to limit the Kal V'chomer. So the Gemara explains, Hasam over there, by the case of Miriam, Shiva de Shechina like Sive. The Torah didn't tell you at all what to do with Miriam. The Torah is thinking out loud, so to speak. When God is angry at a person, it doesn't say how long that person should be in quarantine. So what is the kal v'chomer? Ase kal v'chomer. So you make a kal v'chomer and you say Aise arbasa. She should stay for 14 days. Fine. So now that's come the kal v'chomer. Ase daye. So then you could put in the daye, and that limits it. No, apek shiva. You take out shiva. V'oiki shiva. You give her you 7 days you push away. That means there's no quarantine for 7 days, and on 7 days there is quarantine. So that's what the kal v'chomer would have took you way far, and comes along the daya and pulls it back. So that works very good in the Chumash example. But over here, chatzi nezek siv. The Torah already tells you that a keren b'rshus harabim pays chatzi nezek. And obviously, Karen B'Shus Nizik will pay Chatzi Nezek. Because what is Karen? Karen is an animal that's angry. And so we say that the first time you'll pay half a Nezek. So that's a given that without any Kal V'chomer, B'Shus HaNizak, I would say Karen pays half a Nezek. So what does the Kal V'chomer do? It takes you to the next step. V'asa Kal V'chomer, V'aisi Chatzi Nezek Achrina, V'nasa Nezek Sholem. Comes along the Kal V'chomer and says, instead of paying Chatzi Nezek, you should pay 100% of the damages. And that's what the kal v'chomer does. But if you're going to use the dayai, if rechle kal v'chomer, then you break the kal v'chomer, then the kal v'chomer is totally useless. Because what's the dayai going to do? Pull you back to chatzi nezek? But chatzi nezek I know without a kal v'chomer. So therefore, that's why it doesn't work in our Mishnah. Says the Gemara, v'Rabbana. Rabbanan, this is a very good thing. Rabbanan, what Rab Tarfon just said, made perfect sense. Answers the Gemara, in the Chumash also, I knew without a kal v'chomer that for the Shechina, you should be quarantined for 7 days. Shiva de Shechina ksiva, it does say that if God is angry at a person, you should be quarantined for 7 days, because the Pasuk says, Tisager Shivas Yomim. The Pasuk says that whoever God is angry at should be quarantined for 7 days. The Torah says that if your father is angry at you, you should quarantine for 7 days. And here also quarantine for 7 days. So we know already that when God is angry at a person, you should quarantine for 7 days. Therefore, and nevertheless, the Dayai says that don't go to 14, stay at 7, even though that will break the Kal V'chomer. That's what the Rabbanan are going to learn Pshat over there. Rab Tarfon says, Ahi Tusager, that Pasuk Tisager, Darshin and Dayahu, that teaches you the concept of Daya. You pull back a Kal V'chomer. That's not teaching you that Shivas Yomim, for 7 days, if God is angry at a person, you should be for 7 days. That just teaches you that when you have a kal v'chomer, you could pull it back with a dayeh. Rabbanan, where do you know the concept of dayeh? Ksiv kra'achrina, I have another pasuk that says vatisager Miriam. Miriam was quarantined for 7 days. So since I have another pasuk that teaches you dayeh, this tisager shivas yamim teaches you that for the shechina, automatically is to 7 days. So even without a kal v'chomer, I still see that for a shechina you're quarantined for 7 days, and nevertheless you'll still say dayeh, despite the fact it will break the kal v'chomer, that you should think 14 days. For Rab Tarfon concludes the Gemara, who the afil b'alma darshin dayeh v'loy toima hacham mishum kvoide shel Moshe avo b'alma loy. Kamash malam. Rab Tarfon says, I need 2 psukim to teach you the concept of dayeh. Because I would have thought that if the one pasuk says dayah over here, a pullback, I would say that only over here by the Chumash, in the story of Moshe Rabbeinu, you pull back because Moshe prayed for Miriam. And therefore we didn't want to go too far. Avo ba'alma, in another case, I wouldn't say dayah. I would say once you have a kal v'chomer, take it as far as you can take it to, as far as you think it makes sense. So Kamash Malan, you need another pasuk that tells you in Kol HaTorah Kula, if you have a kal v'chomer, if you take it too far, you could pull it back with dayah. So bottom line, what the Gemara just ended up over here is that Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbanan have a machlekes, and that is Rabbi Tarfon says that there's a concept of kal v'chomer, and then there's a concept of dayah which pulls back on the kal v'chomer and says don't go so far. But Rabbi Tarfon says you use the dayah only in certain cases, only if it's not going to totally destroy the kal v'chomer. if it's going to destroy the Kal V'chomer, and then you're not going to learn anything from the Kal V'chomer, then you wouldn't say daya. So hence in our Mishnah, Reb Tarfon holds, without the Kal V'chomer, I already know Chatzi Nezek, B'Rshus Kerem, B'Rshus HaNizik pays Chatzi Nezek. So therefore, the Kal V'chomer will say you pay Nezek Shalem, and you won't say daya, because if you say daya, then there's no point of having a Kal V'chomer. Rabbanan, since the way they learn the Chumash is that even if you break a Kal V'chomer, you still say daya, and therefore the Rabbanan will say that in our Mishnah, Kerem B'Rshus HaNizik pays Chatzi Nezek. That's what the Gemara just explained, the Machlekes. New Gemara, the Gemara is just continuing on this theme. Amalei Rav Papa LaBaya. Rav Papa said to Abaya, "V'hai Tana deloy darish daya, v'afa gav deloy mifrach Kal V'chomer." There's this Tana that does not darshan daya, even though the Kal V'chomer is not going to be broken. In other words, there's somebody who doesn't even at all hold of daya. That's a very interesting thing. We just learned in the Chumash that you do say daya to limit Kal V'chomers, and Rav Papa said to Abaya, I found a Tana that totally ignores the concept of daya. He takes a Kal V'chomer till the end. The Tanya we learned in the Brisa, carry bezav minayin. If a zav has a seminal emission, how do you know that seminal emission is metama, not only if you touch it, but if you carry it? Now, normally, if a regularly kosher, a regular healthy person has a seminal emission, that carry is only metama a person if you touch it. But a zav is unique. A zav, anything that comes out of him, let's say his spit, right, or his urine, anything that liquid that comes out of the zav, automatically is metama not only if you touch it, but if you carry it. But what about this carry, the seminal emission of a zav? Is it more than a regular tahar or not? In other words, is a carry of a zav metama b'masa? So the Brisa over here makes a Kal V'chomer. V'dinu, I'll make you a Kal V'chomer. Ma tahar b'tahar, if spit from a tahar is tahar, right? Spit from a tahar person is tahar. If somebody spits on you, it's okay. But tamei b'tamei. But if it comes from a tamei person, like a zav, the spit can make you tamei. So tamei b'tar, something that's tamei when it comes out of a tahar person, for example, keri that comes out of a tahar person, and it could be it is tamei. Einei din shehei tamei b'tamei. So certainly keri coming out of a zav is tamei. And the Gemara, if you look at that brisa, the kamaisila bein lamaga bein lamasa, that no matter keri of a zav is tamei, whether you touch it, whether you carry it. Ba'amai, why don't you say ahani Kal V'chomer lamaga, keri, that the whole Kal V'chomer teaches you that keri of a zav is tamei if you touch it, and ahani daya, and let's say daya la puki masa, to say that don't go so far and say the keri of a zav is masa. Keri of a zav should be only maga, and that's it. So you see that there is a Tana that totally ignores this concept of daya. So the Gemara says, wait a second, are you going to say lamaga lo yitzrach Kal V'chomer? Keri of a zav, I don't need a Kal V'chomer. Why should keri of a zav be tar? The like gavra mekavatar. Keri of a zav shouldn't be any worse than coming out of a tar. And just like when it comes out of a tahar, it's tamei. Certainly, if it comes out of a zav without any pasuk or Kal V'chomer, I would say it's the tamei. It's druch. I would think differently. I would have thought mikre laila, the ksiv. The Torah says that when keri comes out of a person, seminal emission, only if you were tahar, then you become tamei. Misha kari goyim loy. Only if your keri causes you to become tamei, that's when you are tamei. Yotzazeh she'ain keri goyim loy. It's the keri that doesn't cause you to become tamei. Eladav acha goyim loy. You were already tamei from before. So I might have thought that you wouldn't even be tahar. You would a keri coming out of zav is completely tahar. Kamash malam, so that's what I need the Kal V'chomer to teach you. Kal V'chomer, that to teach you that even the keri of a zav becomes tamei. So the Gemara.
Why was he tamei before?
Because the zav had like a sickly seminal emission that's called zav. It didn't.
But before he had it, he was tamei?
Yes, he was a zav tamei, and then he had a regular ejaculation, a regular seminal emission. So I would think, since he's already tamei, Since he's already tame, so therefore it's not this seminal emission is not a tame emission. So if somebody else would touch it, he wouldn't become tame.
Oh, I got it. I understand. Okay.
Now, so that's why I don't need. Are you going to say? So I do. So the Gemara says I do need the Kal V'chomer to tell me that mikre that he should be tame. Answers the Gemara. If that I should never have a hava to say. If seminal emission comes out of a regular person is tame, so the seminal emission coming out of a zav should also be tame. The Torah doesn't make sense. So therefore, what the basically is that that's not a good person, because really the Kal V'chomer teaches you that the carry of a zav goes one step further, that it goes smatama b'maga and b'masa. That's it. And if you say dayai and you're going to say it's only mitama b'maga, then you're not going to have a Kal V'chomer anymore. So the Gemara just opens parentheses. Like if you have to open parentheses, the Gemara opens a parentheses, goes off a little tangent. Man Tana, the Amrit Lei, who's the Tana, the Shamet Lei, the Amrit Shich V'zera Shazam Mitama B'masa? Who's the Tana of the Brisa that says Shich V'zera of a Zav is one step further than a regular carry? Shich V'zera is another name for carry. Is Mitama B'masa? Who's the author of that Brisa? Loi Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Yeshua. Doesn't go according to Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Yeshua. Tanya, we learned in a Mishnah, Shich V'zera Shazav, Mitama B'maga, Ve'ein Mitama B'masa. Divrei Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer holds it's a Shich V'zera Zav. It's only if you touch it, but it's not if you carry it. It says this is the words of Rabbi Lezer, which means that the Shich V'zera is different than the spit of a Zav. The spit of a Zav, the Chumash says that not only if you touch it you become tamei, but even if you carry it, if it lands on your sweater, you become tamei. But Rabbi Lezer says Shich V'zera of a Zav is only mitama b'maga. Rabbi Yeshua says af mitama b'masa. It could, if you carry it, it could also be mitama you, because the shich v'zera of a zav also has some droplets of sickly semen, which is zav stuff in there. That's why it's mitama you b'masa, because there is zav stuff in there. Rabbi Yeshua says that the reason why Shech V'zera of Zav Mitama B'masa is because there's a little ziva there. But if it was pure semen, it wouldn't be Mitama Yu B'masa. So who is the Tana that holds pure semen of a Zav will be Mitama Yu B'masa? So the Gemara says, it's the following Tana. Now we learned in the Mishnah, Lamala Mehen, we go to Amid Beis. There's a Mishnah Masechta Kalim that says Shich V'zara of a Zav is Matama B'maga B'masa. So you see, it's clearly that there is a Tana that says the semen of a Zav is Matama B'maga and B'masa, even if you carry it. Maybe this Tana is also concerned that the reason why the Shich V'zera of a Zav is Matama B'maga B'masa is only because there's a little ziva in there. But how do you know if it was pure Shich V'zera, it would Matama B'maga B'masa? How do you know if this Tana would agree to that? So the Gemara says in Cain, if that's what the opinion of the Tana, L'snaya Gabay Zoivay, Mashna Diktoni Le Gabay Roikay, Elishum Shum Da'asim Roikay. If Shich V'zera has a little piece of zav in it, then they should put this right over here. By Zoiv Shel Zav, they should put Shich V'zara Shel Zav because it has a little bit of Zav in it. It has a little sickly semen in there. The fact they put spit in there, it juxtaposes spit to Shich V'zara. Just like spit is pure spit, so also pure Shich V'zara V'zav, it's Mataba B'maga Mamasa. So that will be the author of the Brisa before, that Shich V'zara, pure Shich V'zara of a Zav, can be Mataba B'maga Mamasa. Now the Gemara closed the parentheses and goes back to the question. One more question, and then we'll stop. Amalei Rav Acha Medifti Ravini. Rav Acha from Difti said to Ravina, "Well, Hai Tana the loy darsh daye the Afa Gavdali Mefrach Kavachayma." I found a Tana that doesn't at all hold of any diet to limit a Kal V'chomer. There's no such a thing of a diet. Why? How do you know that? The Tanya we learned in a Brisa. Mapatz b'meis menayin. How do I know? The Torah says that if you have a dead body in a room, only like vessels become tamei. How do you know if there's like a sleeping bag in the room where there's a mace? How do you know that becomes tamei? It's vidinu. That's a kal v'chomer. Ma pachem ketanim. If you have perfume bottles, like small pachem ketanim, which is in this week's pasha. Anyway, that Yaakov went back for pachem ketanim, little perfume bottles. Shetahirim b'zav. A zav touches it, it's tahar, because a zav can't fit his finger inside of it. Mitame b'meis. Nevertheless, if it's in a room with a dead body, it becomes tamei. Mapat shebetame b'zav, a sleeping bag that a zav who sleeps on it would be mitama. Ein adin shitama b'meis. Certainly, it should become tamei if it's in a room where there's a mace there. And what are you saying that the map? So what's the teacher over here? The teacher is mapets that becomes tamei by a zav. So the student is mapets becoming tamei by a mace. And yet you say that the mapets become tamei by a mace will be tamei for 7 days, even though the teacher, mapets becoming tamei by a zav, is only tamei for 1 day. So you see that you can take the kal v'chomer and have the student be bigger than the teacher, and you don't say dayoy to pull it back. The kamais v'lo bein l'turas erev, bein l'tu v'shima. V'amai. Why should you say such a thing? Ahani kal v'chomer l'turas erev. The kal v'chomer teaches you that mapets does become tamei b'meis. V'ahani dayoy lapuki to v'shima. But it should say that if it's in a room where there's a mace, it should only be tamei for 1 day, but not for 7 days. The dayoy should pull it back. So the fact that this Tana doesn't say a dayoy pulls it back, so he must hold there is no such a thing of a dayoy. Amalei. So this was Rav Acha from Difti's question to Ravina. So Ravina answered, Amalei kvar Roman and Rei Nachum Bazchari Labaya. But Amalei Abaya, and Abaya said, Tana b'mapats b'sheretz ma'isela. The real limit over here is mapats b'sheretz. V'hachi Kamma. There's words missing in this brisa. Mapats b'sheretz m'nayin. If a sheretz touches a mapats, how do you know it becomes tamei? The Torah says if a sheretz touches a keli, like a cup, it becomes tamei. But a sleeping bag, how do you know it becomes tamei? V'dinu ma pachem tam shtarim b'zav tamei b'sheretz pachem ketanim. Small vessels. If a zav touches it, it is tahar. But a sheretz touches it, because a sheretz could slip inside of it, it becomes tamei. Mapets tamei b'zav. So mapets, which does become tamei by a zav, because a dove could sleep on it, and when a zav sleeps on something, it becomes tamei. Einidin shei tamei b'sheretz. So certainly a mapet should become tamei via sheretz. So that's what the brisa. And when a mapet becomes tamei by a sheretz, it's for 1 day. Just like a mapet that comes tamei from a zav, it's 1 day. A mapet becomes tamei by sheretz, it's also 1 day. One more line and then we'll stop. Ella mapets b'meis m'nayin. How do you know? But if a mapets is in a room with a dead body, how do you know it becomes tamei? Because the pasuk says beged va'ar b'sheretz. We already know that a mapets can become tamei by a sheretz through a kal v'chomer, and a normal kal v'chomer, and it becomes tamei for a day. So it says beged and or by a sheretz. The nebeg beged va'or b'meis. It says the word beged and or by a mace. Ma beged va'or homer b'sheretz, just like by a sheretz. Mapets tamei by a not. You could sheretz could be mitame a sleeping bag. Af beged va'or homer b'meis. Even though it says by a mace beged and or, it will also include mapets tamei by a mapets will become tamei by it. Okay, we will stop. We'll stop. So just to finish up the Gemara over here, the Gemara just is going to conclude with you're trying to find out how a mapatz, a sleeping bag that's in the room from a mace, becomes tamei. So the Gemara said you learn it from a gzeira shava from beged and or from sheretz. Just like a sheretz could be mitama a mapatz, so also a mace, it says the same word beged and or, could also be mitame emapets. That's what the Gemara just conclude. So the Gemara just adds 2 more points. Mufna. These words, to make a kal v'chomer, to make a gzeira shava, they have to be empty. That means unnecessary. The ilay mufna, because if they're not necessary, if they're not open, in other words, if they're not necessary to, if it was necessary to write beged and or by sheretz or by mace, I have a question. You can't learn a gzeira shava from sheretz to mace, because sheretz could be A sheretz is more stricter than a mace. You would think so. Mal a sheretz came mitama bakadasha. A sheretz, it could be mitama even if it's the size of a lentil bean. The sheretz, even if it's the size of a lentil bean, could be mitama other things. But a mace has a leniency. She'ain mitama kagadasha. A lentil bean is not a good enough size. It needs to be the size of an olive, and therefore, just because a sheretz could be mitama mamapitz doesn't mean a mace could be mitama amapitz. So the Gemara says, so one of them must be unnecessary. One beged, one beged or needs to be unnecessary. Lai, you're right. Afnui mifneh. It's one of them is unnecessary to write it. Why? Michte sheretz. A sheretz, it doesn't have to write beged or ar. The Torah didn't have to tell you that a sheretz could be mitama beged and ar. Iskish l'shich v'zera. The Torah compares it to shich v'zera. The ksiv aish asher teitze usmich le aish asher yiga b'chol sheretz. The Torah says that uksiv be b'shich v'zera v'chol beged v'chol ar asher yol of shich v'zera. And the Torah says by shich v'zera beged and ar. So it did, since sheretz is juxtaposed next to shich v'zera. So of course, sheretz could be mitama, a beged and ar. Beged ar, the kasar rachmana b'sheretz lamali. Why did the Torah repeat the sheretz beged and ar by sheretz? Shmamina lefnui, it's extra to darshan alay gzeira shava. So the Gemara says vakati mitzad echad. It's you have beged and ar from one side open. Yes, you could learn gzeira shava. But not everybody agrees that. That if it's open from one side, the Gzeira Shava, you could learn a Gzeira Shava, and you have no questions asked. Shopper, that's good. According to Mandiyama, there's another opinion that says both sides need to be empty in order to make a Gzeira Shava that with no questions asked. What are you going to say about that? And says the Gemara, the mace name afnuya mifne. By a mace also it's empty because unnecessary to write beged or by mace because same idea. Michte mace is kashlish v'zera. A mace is juxtaposed next to shich v'zera. So tmei nefesh shich v'zera. So somebody mace is juxtaposed next to shich v'zera. The Torah says the word beged and or by shich v'zera. So, of course, the Torah didn't have to repeat itself, that beged and or, kimitame by mace. Beged v'rav d'chasar mar b'mace, lamali, shmamina lafnuye, that it's empty. Have a mufne mishnei tzdadim, it's empty from both sides. So the Gemara right now, and we'll end off with one last point, the Gemara just ended off that now we have a gzeira shava, that just like a sheretz could be mitama with a mapetz, so also mace could be mitama a mapetz. And in both words, the words beged and or by sheretz is unnecessary, and by mace it's unnecessary. And because of that, we have a gzeira shava with no questions asked. But at the end of the day, you're learning a mapetz to be mekabel tumah from a mace, the same way a mapetz is mekabel tumah from a sheretz. So the Gemara is going to say that. So maybe let us say the same idea that a mapetz that's mekabel tumah from a mace should only be tamei for one day, just like a mapetz that's mekabel tumah from a sheretz is only one day. That means you learn something and then you apply it to where it is. So you learn that a mapetz could become tamei from sheretz, but then you apply the laws of mace when a mapetz is becoming tamei from a mace. So therefore it's for 7 days. That wherever you learn it from, you take everything with it, which means you take all the halachas. A mapetz being coming tamei from a sheretz is from 1 day. You want to say the same idea by a mace. A mapetz that comes tamei from a mace, it should be only for 1 day, not for 7 days. Amarava, so Rava ends it. Amakra v'chibastem bigdeichem b'yom hashvi. The Torah says you should wash your clothing on the 7th day. Kol tumah she'atem tameh b'meis. Any tumah that becomes tameh from a mace, lo yehi pchusim v'shiva. There's Gzeira Sukkasa that says anything that becomes tameh from a mace, you have a 7-day purification period. No questions. You can't go. You can't do anything different than that. Okay, this ends our today's daf, and we shall continue Be'ez Hashem tomorrow.